power, and I have called you to this by my own greatness and power. And that's what's seen in verse number 4, whereby. So through his great power, whereby are given unto us exceeding great and precious promises. According to God's power, we are given not just great, but exceeding great and precious promises. It's kind of interesting. As you look at what Peter's doing, you can see he is searching for a superlative. Something that is just so magnificent. He just wants to spit it out, but there's no word that he can use that can really convey what he's saying. He's saying God has given us some promises, and these are just great promises. I mean, they're not even great. They're exceeding great. They're real good. I mean, these are great promises. These are wonderful things that God has given to us. And in accordance with this promise, verse number 4, that by these you might be partakers, that is, fellowshippers of the divine nature. Why did God give you these promises? So that you can have a fellowship or relationship with him. Do you see? That is popping up over and over and over again in these 4 verses. He's saying you've got a relationship with God. If you know Christ, if you share this like precious faith that I have, then you are able to have a relationship with God. You have fellowship with God. Did you realize that the only reason we can know God is because God said we could? If God chose to hide himself or chose to hide who he was from mankind, we would have never understood him. We would just be grappling at truth and we would never figure it out. But God has revealed himself unto us. There certainly are things I don't understand about God. There are a lot of mysteries, and in the teen group we talk a lot about the Trinity. And I've heard so many explanations of the Trinity. It's like an egg. It's like Neapolitan ice cream. It's all these different things. None of them suffice. None of them are any good. Because it's 3 persons who are one, and yet they're 3 distinct persons, and yet they're exactly one. It doesn't make sense to me. There's a lot of things about God I don't understand. But the things that he's revealed to me, I can know freely. This book has been given so that we might know him, that we might have a fellowship and a relationship with him. God has made himself known to us. If we receive him, he's promised to be our God. And in this knowledge, we can have fellowship with the Almighty God. Think about that. The one that created you. The one that formed the universe in its great expanse. The one who holds time in his hand. The one who is all in all. The beginning and the ending. You can know him personally and individually. He wants you to know him. That is staggering when you really consider it. First of all, who we are and who he is. But God desires that we might know him. This idea of partakers of the divine nature, it does not mean we become divine. It's not like when you eat something and it becomes a part of you and all that. It's not the idea that we're partakers and we become God. But rather, it's the idea of we can fellowship with God. We remain 2 distinct entities, and yet we can have a fellowship and a relationship with him. He puts his Spirit within us. We become the temple of God. He gives us a relationship with himself. So you say, okay, that's great, fabulous, wonderful, that's nice, and let's go on our way. Well, Peter actually brings it to a very strong conclusion at the end of verse number 4. All these things, and we've seen it throughout this passage, but specifically at the end of verse number 4, he says, you are able to fellowship with the Almighty God. And because of that, at the end of verse number 4, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. Verse number 4 at the end is the practical outworking of the truth that you can fellowship and have a relationship with God. Throughout the entire passage, one thought continues to pop up. Because you know God in a personal way, you can have victory over sin in your life. And it's as simple as that. You say, well, it's not that simple. And you're right. Because sin is appealing. Sin is tempting. There is a great struggle. But God has made the promise and the pledge for you to overcome. If we yield to sin, it's not because we had no choice. If I give in to sin in my life, it's not because I am helpless. It's because I did not exercise God's promise to me. I either didn't believe the promise was true, or I didn't hold to it and follow what it said. In 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 13, it says, "There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it." In every single temptation that you face, God is faithful. God is faithful in all of our struggles. He is faithful to provide us a way of escape, but we have to take the escape route. We've got to be the ones that keep our eyes open in the midst of struggle and temptation and say, all right, this is God's escape route for me. I'm getting out of here. I'm going to flee. He will provide the way for escape. And it all boils down to our relationship. And that's really, as we preach to the teens, that's really something that I think is vital, not just for teens, but for everybody. I can harp on specific issues. And fundamentalism in the past has harped on specific issues. And we can make a big deal about this standard and that standard, and we need to have standards. There really needs to be a matter where we say this is right and this is wrong. But if you are following what is right and not following what is wrong because I am saying it, or because it's being beaten into you, then ultimately that decision is going to falter. But if you're following what is right because you have a relationship with God, then that decision will never falter unless your relationship with God falters. It's a big difference between, all right, this is what the church says, you got to do this, 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 and this. Don't do this, 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 and this, and you'll be okay. When you have a relationship with God, it pushes you to purity. It really